Welcome to the Dad Central Show, hosted by Ed Gow Jr. and Drew Solon. We know dads want to see their kids succeed, but they don't always know how to get there. This show gives dads the tools they need to raise confident and successful kids.
What is up, everybody? Ed Gow Jr. from Dad Central, back for another epic conversation called the Dad Central Show. What is up, Drew? I'm not using any hand signals anymore.
Okay. Thank you for the hand signals. I'm not using the hand signals. I feel a lot better. Ed, it's hard to believe that the year is actually coming to an end. So 25 episodes into the Dad Central Show. So what's up is it's cool to look back at what we've been able to do with the show and think of all the amazing conversations we've had. So I'm excited to keep this going, have another great conversation today, and then really excited about planning for 2023. What that's going to look like and the exciting conversations yet to come. What's up with you?
I first want to say kudos to the great conversation you had with Mr. Sullivan. I watched the replay, and he reminded me of, I forget our friend who was like the really comedian guy. I can't remember his name. He had the story about
Shannon Carpenter you're talking about.
Yes, him and Shannon would be a great tag team together.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll hook that up down the road. Maybe another show.
Absolutely, we can do that. But yeah, what's up with me? Well, I'm sorry I couldn't make the last conversation, but I am back. Looking forward to another epic conversation. And we might as well say it right now. The Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there is positive impact. So we want to say thank you, as always, to Dove Men Plus Care. So you've, I think, maybe met this gentleman. I've never met him before, so I'm excited. And I also have a new question for our dad, so I'm going to bust onto him today. He'll be our test person. But tell us about the friend we have on today.
Well, we've got Geoff Girvitz, and he's up for the task because he's the founder of something called Dad Strength. So no doubt he's able to handle it. But Geoff's a movement and behavior change expert. He helps people improve their mental well-being and physical health through mindful exercise and lifestyle coaching. He's the founder of Bang Personal Training. It's an innovative gym space in downtown Toronto. And as I mentioned, Dad Strength. And that's a resource for fathers to take better care of themselves so they can take better care of the people they love. So really excited to have Geoff on the show. I'm looking forward to a great conversation with him.
Well, if you're excited, I'm excited. Let's bring the excitement person on with us. What's going on, Geoff?
I also am excited. Thanks for having me on.
Good. How's your day been?
It's been great so far. It's been wonderful. I'm stoked to be here. How are you guys? How's your day been? This is 25 episodes deep, you said?
It is. Yeah.
Congrats.
I'm always excited for every conversation. We learn so much, and we really see how much there is in common between many of the dads, no matter where they're from, what their backgrounds are. There's always something significant that kind of ties us all together. So it's really cool to have this opportunity. The way that we love to start the show actually is to get a little bit of the backstory, to learn a little bit more about kind of how you kind of came to this point, but what were the kind of the beginnings? And so we like to ask, if you can take us back to maybe the early years for Geoff. What was life like growing up for you?
Gosh, so I was born in Calgary. Alberta's sort of Texas, Canada, for those who don't know. One of four.
I've never heard that reference in a long time. I have heard it before, but that's a very interesting reference.
Yeah, grab yourself an F-150 and go to town. It's so Calgary's great. It's beautiful. It's lots of green space near the Rockies, which is really incredible. Anytime I'm near the mountains, I'm just kind of filled with this sense of awe. So that part I miss, but I've been in Toronto for 20 years and feel very home here. So, growing up, I sometimes describe myself as kind of a pissed off kid. And I don't mean like an angry teenager. I mean like an angry toddler. I always kind of felt like, there was some dot I was failing to connect. Like I kind of remember that. And so I was trying to, I think kids inherit, we go into the world and we just sort of assume that everything here is, created with great intention. It is done because this is the best version of reality that people could cook up. And then you sort of grow up, you become an old kid and you realize like, we're all just winging it, man. So a lot of things that kind of didn't set well. I think, I work with a lot of men with ADHD and I'm one of them. And I think one of my favorite things about, kind of neurodiverse folks is a real, finely tuned, scale or needle for what makes sense for equity, for, kind of like a friendly, can I swear on this? Do we swear on this podcast?
We typically don't, but
a BS detector, which stands for Bull Pucky. And so there was some stuff about the world that didn't quite sit right with me. And, it still doesn't, to be honest. So I remember that, but also I had very loving parents. I had two brothers quite a bit older than me. And then my sister is a year and a half younger. So it was two really kind of different styles, and experiences. What else? I loved, one of the things, we're right downtown in Toronto. And one of the things that I kind of lament and would like to figure out a remedy for is, my son, we won't just put him on a bike. He's 6 and, we're not sending him out into traffic. But when I was a kid, I would just get on a bike and go. And that is a big part of my childhood memories too. I love to even like get lost and try to find my way back. So those are some of my earliest memories.
What was family like? Because it sounds like there are a few kids going on, parents, etc. So it sounded like it wasn't a quiet household.
No, it wasn't a quiet. Well, my dad actually hated noise, so he was very reactive to noise, and so we learned to move like ninjas. He once famously yelled at one of my older brothers for buttering bread too loudly. And you mean toast, Geoff? I do not. So and I actually remember being a teenager, and like I used to go hang out at a friend's home, and his parents said, we don't like that kid. He's too sneaky. He's always sneaking around the house. And I realized like I had just learned to go up and down stairs silently without making anything creak. I'd learned to to put cups down perfectly even, perfect distribution of gravity and force. So my dad, that's a thing that sometimes where people have certain sensory sensitivities, and that was one of them. So that sort of shaped. So we would have been loud, except but there was lots going on for sure.
Well, I mean, that's really interesting, especially the noticing as you were around someone else's family in another house that they're like, hey, he's sneaking around, but really you just adapted to your environment.
I had no idea. That was me trying to be courteous. After that, I made a point of like clomping down the stairs. It was really funny. But it didn't occur to me that other people didn't do that, or it wasn't, that you didn't have to be quiet. You didn't have to move like a ninja through somebody else's home.
Right. Yeah. But I would imagine that would be interesting to kind of grow up in as a kid, right? That's not typical. But I'm curious to know more moving forward into your home, and you've got a 6-year-old son is, do you see any of those things showing up for you, or any of those tendencies that you didn't even recognize you had that are maybe brought out as you've been raising your son?
Yeah. I mean, I have, ADHD, which would be shocking to nobody, who met me at any point in my life, but it wasn't diagnosed till I was 45. So I do sometimes, I can be, one of the things I notice is if I'm trying to focus on something, like it doesn't matter if it's a free for all, it's a free for all, and I can kind of be there. But if I'm trying to read a book or something, getting pulled out, there's a lot of work to go back to focus. Like I feel that, and maybe, I always say like ADHD there's nothing in my experience that anybody else is lacking, but sometimes in ADHD it's sort of heaped out in bigger doses. So I'll notice, I'll get cranky if I have to keep returning to focus. But I also try to be, I think the way we all parent is sort of a reaction to the way we were parented. And so I try to let a lot of stuff go and really pick my battles. There's a lot of stuff where we feel like we have to be the boss or we have to be in control. And those are good things to notice, but very seldom are they actual. Like they can feel true, but very, very seldom in my experience are they actually anywhere near accurate.
Cool. Let's move on a little bit. Let's hear about your journey to becoming a dad. What fears, hopes, or challenges came up in the process, and how did you manage them, and how are you still managing them when they come up, because they never end?
They never end. Yeah. Um, I have this really clear memory. My son was a few weeks old, and I'm standing in his room, and I'm like imagining. I have all these hopes for him in the future, and I'm imagining him as a young man, maybe in his early 20s, and what that's like, and at the same time, somehow in this imagining of him, I'm feeling like nostalgic and wistful for when he was just a baby, like he's in the other room, he was right there, he's an infant, and that's I remember that as being just, to me, a sign that fatherhood is all of the emotions. Um, so I have, I want him to um, have a wonderful life, as much as what we can control. But I also recognize, like, there's a very limited scope of what we can control. So for me, my big things are: can he emotionally regulate? Can he think critically? Does he know he's loved? Does he feel supported? I'll often say, like, as he's learning to become more independent in a task, I'll say, if you want to do that, I love to help you. So let me know, but you go ahead and do that yourself. I like him to know that. That's not one way or another, and he's got more support if he needs it. Everything else, honestly, is like me stuff, and that's most of it. I find my experience of fatherhood has been, and there's a big thing I talk about in my community, is like, how's your self-care? Right. And I think you guys talk about that too. What's your self-care like? Because if you are a hot mess, how are you going to do? I think the number one priority for dads, for parents, and above everything else, is just to be present. You can read every book, you can watch every TED talk on parenting or whatever, but at the end of the day, like, are you noticing? Are you responding? Are you showing? Are you in the moment with them? And I think that is the top priority. And the way, you can't just like hit a switch and be present necessarily, but there are a collection of mental practices that can bring you there. But more than anything else, it's like, do you have enough resiliency kind of in your health systems across the board? Are you sleeping enough? Are you eating well enough? Are you getting daily movement and sunlight? How are your relationships? Do you have a sense of meaning and purpose, right? All of these things, you don't have to be an expert in any of them. You don't need an A grade. You need like a C plus. You need sufficiency, right? And that's enough to build a resilient system. Because again, yeah, if you're kind of a garbage fire and somebody goes, hey, reminder, be more present, you're hanging on by your fingernails. And I know, like, there's no parent that hasn't experienced sleep deprivation. So we all know what it feels like to be really lagging in one quality. So that's kind of how I think of it, is not by being an expert at, being the world's best exerciser, but like, are you sufficient in all these kind of domains of health?
Yeah, really well said. I really love the element of presence too, right? I think it can be easy to get caught up in doing all these things, hitting all these checklists, and then in the process, you never really be present. So I'm curious to know, as somebody who is then diagnosed with ADHD, and you're an entrepreneur, you're running your own business, whatever other elements in your life are pulling at you, how have you been able to engage and be present in that process yourself?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you how not to do it, because I've
Okay,
done that
yeah,
too.
tell us. That,
Yeah.
that was actually another question. Am I, have you found it a challenge to do that?
Yeah. Well, it, like, if you want to crash and burn, follow my simple 5-step program. I don't know how many steps are in this program, but the first one is to write an exhaustive to-do list. Just like rack up as many items as you can. Make sure, like, it's more than you could ever finish in a day. And it requires every minute of your day to be on. If you take an extra bathroom break, it's going to throw this away, and so that should be super stressful, right? Make sure that you're exiting your day like overdrawn and out of energy, with nothing left. Try to undersleep, ignore your body signals, all this. So if you want to crash and burn, there's my program. It's free, no charge for that advice. The other way is a balancing act. And I don't mean like work-life balance, which is kind of a funny and maybe not a real concept. But, a while back, I just had this epiphany one day, and it was like, you could end the day not exhausted. What would that be like? And I just started leaving a little bit in the bank, just a little, right? To come home and have that for my family. And I realized how much I got out of that, and how much, more of me, right? You don't want to spend all that energy and then have nothing left for your family. So I focus on, I have my sort of my big rocks and my big priorities, and these are the things that I do, either every day or multiple times a week that I'm on a rhythm for. And if I want to add something, like generally I like to find a cruising speed, right? So let's call that about, 80% of what your capacity is. And so that's how I like to roll. And what couple things happen here. There's space in the day because a lot of the magic and a lot of sort of insight that I've had, or opportunities for innovation, have come in the spaces when I'm not booked to the hilt, where every minute, is locked in. So those spaces and having that slack has been really important. And then kind of knowing that if I'm going to go hard, I'm going to go into a sprint for some kind of project, I'm going to peel back on this other stuff. And it kind of, I don't want to say it like it has to hurt a little, but you have to notice its absence. And the more tuned in I've become to signals from my body and my mind too, like how sharp am I? The more I realize when I'm starting to get overdrawn, when I'm in an overreach period. And that doesn't mean it's not an emergency, but it means, hey, this isn't going to be sustainable for a whole lot longer. So at that point, I know if I haven't already started, I need to immediately take steps to wind it down. Yeah, it's easy. And part of ADHD too is like everything feels urgent. Like every new thought is like, oh, I got to, respond to that. I got to respond to this. And so having systems, and I probably the biggest thing for me is organizing it by principles, by values. Like, what are my true priorities in life? Because something that feels urgent, when I compare it to something else through that lens of priorities and values, all of a sudden it immediately realize, okay, this is not as important as it felt a moment ago.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
good.
Very good. Ed, you gonna hop in?
Yeah, two things. One is a comment, one's a question. The comment is that I've just been blessed to get a gentleman who's mentoring me, who's 81 years old, who coaches CEOs and entrepreneurs. And I asked him, what's the number one quality that a CEO and entrepreneur needs today? And he said, self-awareness. Mm-hmm. So I think with what you were just sharing there, a lot of it was involving self-awareness, so that resonated with me. And I also want to just to touch a base, if you can, about raising your son. I have a question here. Is there anything you did not have growing up that you want your son to have?
That's a good question. It's a great question. Yeah, I feel like, now I don't know if this is true, and I don't know if it would have mattered. Again, my parents cared. They made a lot of efforts. But I always felt like, because distractibility is such a big thing for me, and in particular because the environment we live in now is actually designed for distraction. Like, your attention has been commodified, to be clear, right? So we live in an inherently distracting environment. And I wonder if, when we think about future-proofing our kids and giving them the most fundamental skills, I wonder if the ability to concentrate, the ability to focus, is not at or near the top of the food chain. And so I want my son to have the skills. And I'm not, it's not about being the best at homework, right? Or being an academic. I don't know. He's in grade 1. It's we'll see what paths he wants to take. But I just want him to get into stuff and sort of have the meta skills to learn, follow. I'm starting to watch him now follow the instructions for Lego, and I'm incredibly heartened by that. And I don't know if I ever did, to be honest, right? I was like, I'll riff here. It's jazz Lego. But he's able to do this, and he's able to, when he draws, see a thing and conjure it sort of into a recognizable form. I can see what he held in his mind's eye. So I'm excited by that. I tried to create an environment that facilitates that. And if nothing else, that's my hope for him.
Thanks for that, Drew.
Yeah. Great question, Ed. Really appreciate that, and thank you, Geoff, for that perspective. It's really cool to hear that. What I'm wondering is if you can talk about the idea of being diagnosed with ADHD at 45 and how that's affected your fathering at all, well, in one way or the other.
Yeah, like I said, it's not like it was shocking news or it came out of left
Okay.
field. And it was my wife who encouraged me to get a formal diagnosis. I was like, we know, right? I've read a bunch on it, really, like, I have a lot of the characteristics. She's like, don't you want to be sure? And the more I reflected on it, the more I said, hey, and maybe I should try pharmaceutical interventions. There are some ADHD meds that I know people for whom it's been profound to get a prescription. So, in the end, I did try a bunch of meds, and in the end, nothing was really, like, it was all a lot of, I think maybe I feel a little, or I concentrate a little more. Like, nothing was like clear and unambiguous enough for me to really stick with. However, I think when I reflect back on kind of that transition, going, okay, there's a name, sort of a formal diagnosis. I found it freeing. I found it liberating, and I will tell you why. Because for a lot of my professional life, I felt like I was ice skating uphill. There are a lot of things, the ADHD, like a deficit of attention is a misnomer. That's really not the case. People with ADHD have tons of attention. It's ridiculous, but the issue is sort of controlling it. I always imagine, you ever see X-Men, Cyclops, before he got his special visor, is just shooting lasers out of his eyes, like taking down schoolhouses and stuff. We can't have it. So you had to learn to focus that power, right? And so that's the thing about it. It can be hard to control. And so sometimes on a fairly mundane admin related task, for example, it just felt like Kilimanjaro. Like I could do it. And you can always get it done if it, especially if it's like really important or salient, like you're in a time crunch. But the amount of effort required is so disproportionately high. Problem is this: it takes you away from what your unique strengths are. Everybody's got special stuff if we dig into it, but I find that neurodiverse people, in particular, if we dig in, if we really look and kind of cultivate this stuff, have some really special gifts. But if you're spending all your energy on other stuff, just trying to play catch up with a neurotypical world, it's really exhausting. And I kind of just finally felt free enough to go, oh, let me delegate this. Let me say no to this. Let me just find another path to doing this so I can spend more time in my areas of unique strengths. And first of all of a sudden work became a lot more energized, a lot less exhausting. And I was spending more and more time doing things that only I could do. And to that's been a really important inflection point. And, I would counsel anyone to, within the constraints of their working life and their environments and everything else, do whatever you can to build a wedge, buy yourself a little bit of time. And the other thing I'll say about that is I also felt guilty because this was stuff I wanted to do. I didn't just like feel good at it. I liked doing it. And I was like, who am I? Who am I to do this? Right. Get over it. Like, you're you to do this. And it really makes a difference when you can lean into that stuff. So, I would just encourage anyone to just start to shift things a little bit and seeing what they can do as they continue to develop these unique abilities.
Yeah.
Good stuff. You want to go on, Drew, or you want me to jump in?
Yeah, I'd love to hop in here and maybe, because what I'm hearing, and Ed mentioned it before, is this idea of self-awareness, but even some others' awareness. And really, as I think about it, it's like creating this idea of inner strength. And you use terms like superpower and those things. So to me, yeah, this totally ties in with which. So I want to pivot and talk then a little bit about, dad's strength. Like that's your new approach. That's a podcast that you've got. You've got a community building around dad's strength. Mm-hmm. Maybe can you tell us the story of how did dad's strength come to be, and then what's your goal? What are you trying to achieve with dad's strength?
Dad Strength early days was just, my wife was pregnant. I started tinkering with this project, and it was just, I just wanted to be a good dad, not a bad dad. Like I just wanted to show up. And initially, and so I'm not a parenting expert, I'm not an ADHD expert, but I'm a parent, and I'm an entrepreneur with ADHD. And so I kind of speak from my perspective about this. The strength piece is sort of twofold. My background, I own a personal training studio in Toronto, and movement and exercise for me personally have been just absolute game changing in terms of my mental health. Right. And so, for anybody who's struggling with whether anxiety, depression, or anything else, I always ask the question, are you getting daily movement in? Doesn't have to be. You don't have to look like a pro power lifter. You don't have to look like a marathon or anything. Are you just moving? Are you checking in with your body, and building that kind of felt sense? So there's kind of technique and interoception, which is to say, just like, what do I feel going on in my body? So the health, and through years of continuing education and nutrition and exercise physiology and all this stuff. I speak to the what strength coaches would call organismic strength, which is just to say, like, what do you have in the tank? How adaptable are you as an organism? If we throw a bunch of random stuff at you, do you have an adaptive reserve? Can you respond to it? So physical strength is a component. It's one of many, right? And I just know that when we have sufficiency, like I was talking about before, in different, across our health domains, you just have a more resilient person who's ready for more, and who's not over-indexed in any one area. We need some bandwidth. We need some extra. And the other part of strength, I really think about is community. And what I want Dad Strength to be in a lot of ways is a relational healthcare network. I think the pandemic tuned a lot of us into the fact that, we're kind of isolated. And a lot of people are looking for not just, relationships, but a real sense of connection. And for like our groups. And so I run, coaching cohorts where we get on, and there's no small talk. I always thought I was like a hardcore introvert. And then I realized I just hated small talk. Right. We cut to, these are very sort of meaning driven people who identify first and foremost as dads. I think this is kind of this generation, as far as I can tell, is really where we have the highest proportion of men who identify like that's a primary part of their identity. For forever, it was like, well, I'm a businessman, and I'm an avid racquetball player. I love a fine whiskey, and some like 4 or 5 items down the list. They're like, oh yeah, and I've got 4 kids, and it's like people are showing up first as dads, and these are my people, right? We're trying to do right by our kids and our partners. We're trying to live intentional lives, and I think a lot of it is just being able to have these conversations, hear different perspectives. Right. I've spent enough time in entrepreneur communities, and it's like, it's cool to hear if everybody's like a CEO or founder, and there's a unique perspective that comes from that. But it's amazing then to turn around and hear from a person who's like, yeah, I do my job, and I don't, it's not my identity. It's a means to an end, and I leave it the second I walk out of the office. And then you kind of find out what that perspective is like. So being able to connect dads like this has been, for me, really enriching, and I think helps, like I said, build that relational healthcare network.
I'm curious to know, what was the process in getting Dad Strength started? How did it come about?
Like a lot of projects, right? We've all had this stuff like, oh, I should do this. I should write the Great Canadian Novel. I should repair an old car, whatever. So we're sort of sitting kind of in pre-activation mode for a long time. But I always felt like there was an energy around it. When I talked to people, the dads I connected with were curious about it. I finally, I connected with an organization, they were building a podcast network, and they wanted to bring Dad Strength on. And this is the beginning of 2022. And I was like, you know what, let's do this. Like if I'm continually waiting to feel ready, I'm just going to be waiting the rest of my life. So let's run and gun. So I started throwing stuff up, and just kind of, I'll say this. What's been nice about this is I don't feel like I have to be anything other than me. A lot of times, you know, I don't know if we want to call it imposter syndrome, but you kind of feel like you have to show up and have all the answers, right? And I've been able to be really transparent with, like, here's the podcast, here's where we're at, here's what I'm wondering about. I don't even know if we should go this direction or that direction. I just talk people through it, right? It's really easy. It's easier maybe than any time in history to pretend to, like, put a polish on things and look like you have it all together. And you know what? We've seen stuff with high production value. We've sort of maxed out on that. And what I think we're all looking for is just somebody to be honest, like, and upfront, like, give me a known quantity. Let me know what I'm really working with. Let me know. And when, you know, so I'm upfront about what I know and what I don't know. And to me, that has been really freeing. And it gives me the opportunity to not have to, you know, to pretend to be an expert. I ask questions. I learn, you know, so much from these other dads. And so, and as I've gone, I've just kind of recognized, like, this is serving a need. You know, the other big question I've asked myself is, you spend so much of your professional life going, oh, okay, if I could just get to this next level of, you know, of scale, or, you know, all these people want to, you know, exit, you know, find a great exit for their business or whatever else. I just said, let's skip to the end game here. Like, let's pretend somebody's just handed me $50 million. Okay, now what? And I think some people are like, you know, will instinctively just say more. I need gold toilets and super yachts. But for me and the people I connect with, you know, we're looking for meaning. And so the question is, okay, after I've, you know, quote unquote, made it, now what? And this is my answer. This is what I would be doing with my time. And I realized I don't have to wait for $50 million to do this. It's no less significant. It's not really changed. And I don't even need it to have better production value, you know, for those same reasons. That's not what people care about. So that's kind of what got me to here.
Thank you. Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, thanks, Geoff. You know, the authenticity. You referenced the fact that we're, I think you said isolated, right? And the pandemic has exacerbated that. It shows that there's a real hunger and a need for authentic connection, like real relationship. You talked about we don't do the small talk. We just get into the real issues right away. And, you know, it's great to hear that that's actually what's resonating for people. And I think you're right. There is and you referenced distraction before, right? I think, you know, we've got more ways to stay connected to people than ever with all the devices and technology and tools. Yet people are more lonely. They're more anxious. They're more disconnected, like, relationally, than they ever been at time. And so I agree with you. I think people are craving real, authentic connection, a real relationship, but with meaning. That's what you're talking about, with purpose, with what really matters, not just connection for the sake of connection for the sake of, I want to find some real meaning and purpose behind what I'm doing, how I'm doing it. And really, what's more meaningful than the people who are most important in your life? Your family,
100%.
right? And your children.
Yeah.
So I hear that that's really what you're bringing through Dad Strength, and it's really resonating for people. And so I just want to encourage you. That's fantastic. I love to hear that. But I'd also love to learn a little bit more about, now that you're getting people into this community and you're being able to relate on a very real level. Like, what have you found to be an area that dads need the most support in, or are looking for more of?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if there's, you know, it's so much that people come in are like, you know, this is my question, like, answer this and everything's going to be sorted. I think we're agreed. You know, I've been thinking a lot lately about what is a community, right? What makes a community? And I think we are, I think a community is oriented toward, you know, a purpose or a value. But it's also, you know, the people are looking at each other. It's not all sort of top down. Sometimes we serve, and sometimes, you know, we are served. Sometimes we hold people, and sometimes we're held by people. I think that flow is multi-directional. It's not just kind of one person, you know, taking care of everyone. I think giving everyone an opportunity, right? What are the fundamental human needs? And some would argue there is a need for autonomy or freedom. there's a need for competence or mastery, and there is a need for relatedness, a sense of belonging, and that includes the ability to help other people when it comes up. So I think that, our people most of the time show up and are cool, are like checking in. Here's what's on my mind. And every once in a while, someone will have something really sort of juicy and tough and human that they're struggling with. And there's no real organization. People go in and are there to help. There's no, we don't worry about turn taking or like, completely equal distribution of time. There's just sort of I think a lot of relationship health is, we just check in a lot with each other. Most of the time, like if someone's chronically struggling, something's up. We need some kind of intervention. There's something's not working in their life, and we'd like to troubleshoot and figure out what that is. And I think in a lot of cases that's sort of more my role. We'll talk about that one-on-one. But as far as the community goes, mostly we're checking in with each other. Here's what's on our minds. We help each other kind of process and think. And in the times that people need more support, it's right there. It's waiting for them really with open arms. And I think that's it is humanizing. It is strengthening. You do feel stronger and kind of more at peace knowing that you've got that.
That's great. Thanks, Geoff.
Good stuff. I want to ask you, what have you seen make the biggest difference for the men and the dads you've worked with? And it sounds like you may have covered that already, but if there's anything you want to add to that question, that conversation piece.
Yeah, we've talked about health domains, and we've talked about presence, and I would say, if we sort of want to go zoom out and go even kind of bigger picture, high level, to me, it's just taking the time to clarify what do I want? What are my priorities? What do I value most in this world? And kind of look at everything through that lens. Because I think that is we all want to do more stuff. I mean, one of the kind of bittersweet things about being human is like, there's just more than that we want to do that we'll ever be able to do in the finite amount of time that we have. Right. And in some ways that's beautiful. Strength training is the same thing, that we periodize exercise programming because we can't work on all of the stuff. Right. So we have to choose, how do we distribute this across time? And understanding what your values are and really digging in, and it helps to have someone do this with you, helps you prioritize and helps you say, like, this is a nice to have, but this is integral. Like, this is a must have in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I would encourage anyone to kind of begin to do that discovery process.
You said many, many great things. And in just your most recent response, you said two very powerful words: with you.
Mm-hmm.
With you, not alone, with you. So I just want to highlight on what you just shared there, those two words, with you. Drew?
Yeah, Geoff, thanks so much. It's been a really good conversation. Love learning a little bit more about Dad's Strength, the work that you're doing, and your real whole, I think, health perspective of how you show up healthy as a dad, and that's kind of what I'm hearing. And really, understanding yourself, understanding how then what you need to be able to care for yourself and then care for the others in your life. So, if people want to learn more about you, where can they go?
Drew. Hold on.
Ed's got his question.
I've got two questions, quick questions.
Okay, there you go.
Because
Geoff.
I think on the go here, just taking the atmosphere and the temperature of, we say temperature of the room, is a digital room. So first question, as a dad, what is one thing you'd want to get better at?
It's like, it's in my head, it's like everything, but
well, you can pick one.
I think, I'll say one thing, and I think every parent can relate to, hey, like, how was school today? Fine. Like, what'd you do? Nothing. Like, to really get better, and I'm, made some inroads, but like really figure out, how do I make these conversations salient to my kid? How do we really, like, in the same way I'm ready. I'm ready to just skip all the small talk and get to the really juicy stuff. Like, how do I get better at doing that and having these conversations and kind of being able to engage deeply. So it's something I'm very sort of, oriented toward, and I'm working on it.
Good.
But I'll let you know when I master it.
No problem. And my other quick question, what's your dad's superpower?
Oh man. So I think my superpower in general is I'm really driven to understand. I'm kind of a restless soul, and I really like things have to make sense to me. And so I call it translation, but it's like, it's not from another language. I'm just kind of looking at, getting a felt sense of what's going on, try to understand all sorts of complexity, and then find a way to break it down into simple terms. So I'm an idealist, but I'm also super practical. Like, if we can't use it, like, your ideals are great, but like, if they're not applicable, I don't know what to do with them. Right. So, as far as it pertains to me being a dad, it means we get to discuss stuff. It means we get to talk through stuff, and I can ask questions. I'm still, I've been a coach for 15 years, so I know when, what prompts to use sometimes. Like, I feel like I have a little bit of an advantage there, and I know where to lay back and not come in with a solution, right? Where I know when he can kind of bridge the gap. And so that I feel is one of the best things I do as a dad.
Okay. Thanks, Drew. You can go.
Thank you, Ed. And Geoff, that's great. I love those questions, and I love, Geoff, your responses to those. So that's very great. So yeah, let's tell others where they can find more about Dad Strength.
Come to dadstrength.com, and I just put up, I want to share this. I wrote a guide for partners of people with ADHD. So if you have ADHD, and sometimes it feels like you and your partner are speaking different languages, it's because you process the world differently. So I put a guide up to share with your partner so they can have better insight into how to communicate with you, what battles to fight, what battles to skip. So you can check it out there. You'll find it on the resources page. That's what I got.
That's great. Thank you, Geoff. I actually have someone in the Dad's group that I'm a part of who has a partner, and he was also diagnosed with ADHD when in his 40s as well. And so I'm going to be sharing that with him. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Well, thank you for everything you have, are, and will be doing. And you have a home here. So if there's anything we can help you in moving forward, we're all in this together. So we want to just say, don't just manage your time, manage your energy, and remember to give yourself grace.
Nice. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for making us better. Be well. All right. It's take home time, Drew. Take home time.
Yeah. Well, I think Geoff summarized it at the end when he said, I'm very much into understanding things. And so I think I heard that throughout the theme throughout his time sharing with us is, a deep understanding of yourself is what he really shared. And then from that place of understanding of yourself, like how do you then take action? How do you make daily decisions that are going to match with your priorities, the things that are important that you know about yourself and how you need to show up in the world, and then see the results from there. So that's really where the work begins. And so, yeah, that's my takeaway from the conversation.
I'll make it short and sweet. Just piggybacking what you're saying, self-awareness, make a decision, take action.
You should trademark that. That's good stuff.
I just listen and go with the flow. Intuition. Us coaches, we use our intuition. So I just flow with the intuition. But another great conversation. And as we close up, as always, we want to say to our family, the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man. And because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. And as always, we want to hear from you. We absolutely want to hear from you. So first things first, you can email us at podcast@dadcentral.ca. You can go to our website where there is billions and billions of free resources. And then also you can watch and listen replays of these epic conversations at dadcentral.ca. So as always, want to say thank you for taking time out of your day, and also subscribe. I'm noticing more people are subscribing. So thank you so much. Spread the word. And as always, remember to give yourself grace and don't just manage your time, manage your energy, and look forward to seeing you next time. Be well and keep the faith.